You know that voice in your head that narrates your day? The one that tells you you're being silly, or you're awkward, or that you need to change how you're sitting because you don't look attractive in that angle. I don't think it's describing your reality, I think it's creating it. We hear so much about positive self-talk, but I think we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking how we should speak to ourselves, I think we should be asking why the way we speak to ourselves has so much power in the first place. Because I don't think that voice is harmless. I think it's quietly shaping far more of our identity than we realise. Welcome to the Alara podcast. I'm Naomi Gershik and I'll be your host for today's episode. At Yalara, we're exploring what it means to redefine modern womanhood on our own terms, to move beyond inherited expectations, external definitions of success, and the paths we've been told we're supposed to follow. Through conversations about identity, alignment, self-trust, personal growth, and building a life that genuinely feels like your own, we're creating a space for women who know there has to be another way forward, not just individually, but together. This is the first episode I'm recording where I have my notes, but I haven't done a whole pre-podcast podcast. For the first 3 episodes, I literally sat down, spent 2 hours blurting my thoughts about the episode, restructuring them, and then creating an episode, then recording for another 2 hours. Literally saying everything I just said on repeat. So I stopped doing that and I found a better way. I think there's a big cliche online about positive self-talk, and while that is really useful and really good, but I want to take a different angle because there's already so much out there about that, and you can go listen to one of the amazing other podcasts, pieces of content or books out there about positive self-talk. I will touch on it because it's absolutely part of what we're talking about today, but I want to go a level deeper. I want to go underneath. I want to go into the why we speak to ourselves the way we do. I want to go into how we stop doing that and start speaking to ourselves the right way so that we can achieve everything we want to, so that we're setting ourselves up well. I was about to say silly girl, and then I stopped myself and I remembered what the name of the episode is, which is Your Inner Voice Isn't Neutral, It's Programming You. No, we can call myself a funny girl, but we're not calling myself a silly girl. Although sometimes I am silly, and I like that I'm silly, and I think that that is a very good thing. I want to understand why we speak to ourselves the way that we do. So let's talk about it. And let's talk about the effects of it. Let's talk about why our voice has such a power over us and how we act and what that means for our lives and what we actually go through and what we actually decide to do. Because we listen to our voice as if it's the truth. We don't listen to what a salesperson says. We believe 100% of what we say and 0% of what they say. I've learned this from doing sales. Maybe you could tell. But we listen to our voice as if it's the truth. This is why when people get in heated arguments, it often comes from a place of people believing that they are 100% right and what they're saying is 100% true. And it's really difficult to see another perspective or the other side when we're so sure in our voice. The voices that are actually in our head though, the ones that make up our thoughts, our inner monologue, how we speak to ourselves throughout the day when we're thinking about what we have to do, what we haven't done yet, when we're thinking about the past, the future, when we're replaying moments, when we're thinking about thoughts or things that we've heard. Those thoughts, that voice, isn't just there as a voice. It doesn't just exist. We're not sitting there analysing it. To a fault. It's a fault. Because we just take it in and listen to it as if it's true. When actually, that voice carries so much weight and sway with us and our minds and how we act that we're just acting and going through the motions according to that voice. Until we actually stop and question it, until we're observing that voice, we can't challenge it. And the thoughts that do come up and are being said and the thoughts that are running our lives are inner monologues or outer monologues for some of us special people who just think out loud all the time. Those thoughts, the voice that is in your head, some people it's just words, some people it's pictures, some people it's different things, but that voice isn't neutral. And it isn't yours. It's just repetition. It's just what you've heard before. It's just what you've heard the most said on repeat. We don't actually believe what is necessarily true. We believe what we have heard the most, what feels most familiar. Have you ever realised if you've had a version of events, whether it's from gossip or somewhere else, If you then get that version corrected with the truth, actually, we don't then 5 minutes later remember the truth. We remember what we've been hearing on repeat, and that's the narrative that stays with us. That's the narrative that builds up the bigger picture for us. So whether it's that or whether it's other inputs in your life, from authority figures, from your childhood, especially from your childhood, your brain is like a sponge. It just absorbs everything. It's like a parrot. It copy and pastes. It downloads. No child is born with bad intent. It's like that thing. No child is born racist. No child is born with polarizing political beliefs. That's not possible. It's all absorbed from our environment. And as a child, we're especially susceptible to that. Because we're small and we just take anything that adults say as fact, especially your parents. So that's often why these things get passed down from your parents, and often the way that a parent might speak to themselves or the parent might speak to the child is how the child then starts speaking to themselves. Not always, it's not 100% on the parent, but it is a big influence. Because as a child, you're around your parents more than a lot of other people, but you're taking in things from school, things from friends, things from culture that you're exposed to. It's programming your brain. And that continues to later in life. All of our opinions and perspectives and thoughts come from our experiences and what we've encountered, how that affected us emotionally, what imprint that left on us. Childhood is just the most extreme form of that. The reason why is because when you're so small, you're not equipped as well as being an adult to question things and to decide what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. I remember as a child, the first time I was thinking, how did I get here? We all think of it as a child. How did I get here? How am I me and not somebody else? How am I who I am in the world? How is any of this real? The first time you think of that as a child and you start questioning that doesn't happen until probably at least 6, maybe 7 or 8. Probably older, depending on your level of inquisition as a child. It takes so many years of information that has just been absorbed without being questioned before a child starts questioning things. We believe most people are above us or have more information than us, more knowledgeable, more intelligent, have things to teach us. We don't know anything compared to people that are older than us. That's still a belief that I have today. It's a prejudice, but it's a prejudice that we feel because it's how we feel about the order of things, that older people have more experiences, therefore they're wiser. Which, as a trend, there is a correlation. I'm not throwing out the window, but there are outliers. There are people that haven't had the same experiences. Every person has different experiences too. So no experiences are completely transferable and applicable to any one person. But as a young person, we're absorbing so much as we're discovering our place in the world and how small we are. There are more people that are authority figures than when you're older or when you're in a position of authority. And there's a danger with being an authority figure and having a belief that there's limited people you can learn from, because that's then driving the ego. Actually, you can learn from every single person. Every single person can teach, every single person can learn. But this is why a lot of us, especially when we're scrolling online, we will like and listen to a celebrity's voice before we'll listen to someone we've never seen before's voice. Why is that? That's a prejudice. That's a prejudice. We're putting them on a pedestal as a celebrity, that they're better than us because they've achieved more. Their success is more visible. People know who they are. They're more respected. We show them more respect. We give them this authority. It doesn't mean they actually have more authority. We give them that. So often when we're listening to what celebrities say or what influential speakers say, we kind of look to turn to them for the answers. And we treat a lot of what they say as if it's 100% fact, and we don't question it. And then we repeat what they're saying. We repeat their beliefs instead of creating our own beliefs and filling the space and the world with multiple beliefs. One doesn't have to be true without the other. They can all be true. Whether it's childhood, authority figures, our environments, all of that repetition just builds up this bigger picture. That's how the world works. Have you also noticed, though, that the tone in which you speak to yourself compared to someone else is totally different? And this is going to come back to the positive self-talk thing a little bit, because we're so quick to be curated and controlled about how we speak to other people, because we know what we say can hold weight. What we say can pass judgment. So we think before we speak. If we think something in our head about someone that is a judgment, we won't necessarily say that out loud to them, or out loud in general, for that matter. When we're speaking to other people, we're so controlled and we're thoughtful and we're conscientious. But that voice in our head, not only is it repetitive, but it is unfiltered. It's messy. It's not curated. It's not choosing which thoughts to come and go. So any repetition we're getting is a mixture of the positive and the negative. There's more negative that we speak to ourselves than we would speak to other people. Because someone else's opinion of us is how we're coming across. And we want to be liked. We want to fit in. We want to connect. We want to have a place with people. We give more weight to what other people say to us than what we say to ourselves. Their voices that are the curated versions. But actually, we're not seeing all of the thoughts and the things that they're saying about us in their heads. In the same way, they don't see what we say about them in our heads. The unfiltered versions, the messy versions. We've already established how we feel about ourselves, and what we believe to be true comes from the most repetition. And yes, people speak about us out loud and we absorb that, and that is one repetition each time that happens. But every time we're repeating that, every time we're saying something different to ourselves, every time we're having those messy, unfiltered, unkind thoughts about ourselves in our head, that is also a repetition each time. But because we're not speaking it out loud to someone else, we don't stop those messy thoughts. We don't filter them through. We don't decide consciously how we're going to talk to ourselves. And when something becomes so familiar, it feels true. Familiarity becomes truth, and truth becomes identity. We take what feels as true about ourselves and we hold ourselves to those beliefs. If we believe we're annoying, we kind of have this association with ourselves that we're annoying. And so when we're talking to other people and showing up in our lives, we're very conscious about not being annoying. But the more time we're thinking about that and being conscious of it, the more we probably actually are being annoying, because our brain isn't hearing don't be annoying. Our brain is hearing annoying. We hear the words that we speak. We don't necessarily hear the positive or the negative. We hear the exact words. So when we're holding this as identity, our behaviour is the result. When we're holding this as the truth, when we're holding it as the standard for ourselves, good or bad, whether we're trying to be it or trying to be the opposite of that, our behaviour is the result. It's unconscious. We can't control the behaviour as the result of that. For example, if we're critical of ourselves and we're not confident in the movements that we're going through, that leads to hesitation. That leads to pausing. That leads to indecision. That leads to not trusting ourselves. If we're doubtful of ourselves, again, we don't trust ourselves. We're not sure. That leads to inconsistency. You can't be consistent in something you're not confident in something you feel doubtful about. Have you ever noticed sometimes when you're nervous and you're doubtful, you start twitching? Like you can't help it, your body just has muscle spasms. You might come away from an interaction and think, I really hated how I moved my body in that certain situation, or how I acted in that certain situation, which is affirming that, again, that it's bad, but it's only because you were holding a certain belief about yourself. Don't be this, don't be this, don't be this, the whole time through the conversation. Instead, if you were like, be this, be this, be this, you would have been more like that. On the flip side, if we're grounded and we believe we're grounded, that then causes us to act in a way that carries more stability. You can think of so many more versions of this, but what is familiar becomes the truth. And what is true becomes identity and shapes our behaviour as a result. So how do we change this? How do we change our behaviour? If we know that our behaviour is directly linked to what we're repeating to ourselves, we can change what we're repeating to ourselves. But you might be like, Naomi, how am I going to change what I repeat to myself? I'm not thinking about what I'm saying to myself the whole time. I'm just saying it. I'm moving on with my life. I'm busy. I'm not really thinking about it. And I still talk to myself the whole time. How do I change that voice? How do I get control of that voice? That's the first thing. If our thoughts are that powerful that they directly influence our behaviour, we have the power to change our behaviour through our thoughts. The first stage to changing that behaviour is just awareness. It's being aware of the thoughts. It's being aware that we're programming our brains by thinking. Just this awareness of that fact in itself will make us think and question every time we speak to ourselves in the future. We might say something and then, because this is in our mind now, we'll then pause and we'll go, Is this helpful? Is what I'm saying to myself, is this thought helpful? Every time we decide, no, this thought isn't helpful, and we choose not to say it, we're reprogramming our mind. We're changing that inner voice. We're removing another repetition, making it less familiar. As long as it's unconscious, that's as long as bad habits can be formed and we can be talking to ourselves in the wrong way. Something that I started doing myself was when I was changing the way I was speaking to myself. Every time I had an unhelpful thought and I recognized it, I paused and I went, is this helpful? No. And then I said out loud the helpful thought. So let's say I said, oh, I'm so stupid. We all say that. That's a thought we all say, but that's not a helpful thought. No one else is calling you stupid. No one else is going, oh, Naomi, you're so stupid. Maybe they might say it as a joke. Even if it's a joke, we still absorb it. It's not necessarily the tone of what is said. The words stick with us. We repeat. We're parrots. That's all we are. We're parrots. We're mirrors. We just do the same thing as input equals output. And then I would say the opposite of that. I would say, I'm really smart. This was a moment where I was feeling tired and my brain wasn't able to cooperate fully. If we speak like that and we actually name the real truth and we speak to ourselves in the way that is kind, in the way that we would speak to others, in the controlled, curated version, that's a repetition. And that repetition kind of cancels out the negative repetition. So every time I was speaking negatively to myself subconsciously, and then I would remember, oh, now it's conscious, I would then get the positive repetition in. This is why affirmations are really popular with people, and a lot of people skip them because it sounds silly or it just sounds cringy or like it will take 5 minutes. What's the point in doing it? Realistically, it's not going to help. Actually, the words I am, anything to do with your identity, as we said, what feels true we hold as identity. So when we say the words I am, it's holding us to an identity. So we kind of skip the step of familiar and patterns, but we make that link straight away by linking it to our identity. So I say, I am smart. I had a moment of being tired. I don't want to speak a lot about manifestation because I want to do a different episode on manifestation as well. But manifestation isn't necessarily like I'm manifesting this into existence. The way you manifest it is you speak it into existence as if it's already true. You're holding identity with it because then you're acting in alignment with that belief. Your behaviour matches that belief, that identity that you feel. So if you're going after a dream career, you're not saying I'm manifesting this dream career into existence. You're going what you need for that career. You're saying, let's say you're driven. I am driven. I am driven. I work hard. I already am. Even if you don't feel that you're there yet, just saying I am means that you're acting in the way that you would need to be to fulfill that potential, to fulfill that goal. Affirmations actually really do help. We don't necessarily need to wake up in the morning, stand in the mirror and say 10 things that we love about ourselves. I mean, sure, that would be great if you did that, especially if you're reprogramming your mind. But that doesn't necessarily need to be how we do it. It just needs to be in moments where we're becoming more aware of how we're speaking to ourselves. We say the affirmation then. And saying it out loud really helps too, because then you hear it with your ears and you're processing it in a different format. The more I was doing this, the more I was catching myself out, the more it became conscious. And every time it became conscious, it actually changed the way I thought and felt about myself because of the amount of repetitions I was having of positive self-talk. I was starting to believe I'm really intelligent. Someone can be intelligent and not believe that they're intelligent. But the only way they're going to believe they're intelligent is by them saying to themselves, I'm intelligent. We're so reluctant to compliment ourselves, even in our own heads where no one else can hear it. But if we build that repetition, we start believing those things. We start believing that we're intelligent, and then we move through life in a more intelligent way. Every time we affirm that we're stupid, we start moving through life in a more unsure, clumsy way. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to find the right words to say. I used to speak to myself as a child really poorly. I remember looking at myself in the mirror when I was a child and just going, because I'm brunette with brown eyes, and the standard of beauty, I guess, was the blonde hair, blue eyes. I was looking at myself in the mirror as a child and I was saying, I wish I had blonde hair. I wish I had blue eyes. I wish I was pretty. Every day I would stand in the mirror and say that to myself. Was that helpful? Absolutely not. It made me feel so rubbish about myself and what I saw in the mirror. I'm really sad for that child version of myself. I was very young. And I did grow out of this very quickly. Thank goodness. But there was a time where I was speaking to myself really poorly. I got to a point where I liked how I looked in the mirror. That was great because actually for most of my teen years, I did like what I saw in the mirror. And that was such a blessing. But I still had a massive problem with how I looked in photos and video. And this is something we all relate to. Come on, none of us, we all cringe when we hear our own voices back, when we see ourselves in a photo. No, retake it. Especially when we're posting online, when we're putting it up to the perception of other people. We're criticizing ourselves even more because we want to only put our best versions out there. We want to put something out that we love. We can't just put something out that's real. We have to put only the top 1%. And it creates a pressure, but also it means that every time we're taking lots and lots of photos, repeated angles, and now we're choosing which one to post, which version to share with other people. We're then going through and critiquing ourselves. Oh, this wrinkle looks more wrinkly, and this one I look bigger, and this one I look smaller, and this one my hair's in the wrong place, and this one I don't like the angle of my face, and this one... I mean, we pick ourselves apart. And every time we're saying that, again, we're affirming that in our head to be true, that we don't like how we look, and we're being more critical of ourselves. I genuinely believe this is why so many people that do social media models, social media influencers, because they have to watch themselves back so much and choose the versions of themselves that they're putting out online, they're critiquing all the other versions, and that negative self-talk is making them genuinely believe that they're not attractive. How many of these influencers have we seen get plastic surgery or filler or other things, and look, they absolutely can do whatever they want with their body. That is completely fine. And if it's going to make them happy, that's on them. I do want to do another full episode on social media and plastic surgery, by the way, because I feel like it's such an interesting topic and I have a lot to say about it. There's a reason why they're the ones getting all this work done. It's because they're being forced to criticize themselves in every other angle and choose the ones that they want to put out there online. It's not helpful. I was doing this. I was doing it too in my own photos. I couldn't bear to see a photo of myself. If there was going to be a video or a photo or a place that I would need to be visually put online, I would be like, yeah, take it and then just put it out. I don't even want to see it. I don't even want to be a part of it. Just put it away. I didn't want to make the decision because I knew I was going to pick myself apart. And then I was going to end up feeling rubbish about myself. Which is kind of a coping strategy. Like, it's one way of doing it. I guess you could outsource your editing or who posts your photos, but I wasn't genuinely believing I was beautiful in those photos. I didn't see myself the same way in those photos as I did when I looked in the mirror. And you could say, oh, that's because it's mirrored, and there is some truth in that, just about what's familiar. We're repeatedly seeing ourselves one version in the reflected version, and we're complimenting that, and then we see ourselves in the other version, and then we're telling ourselves we don't like that because it's not familiar. But then we genuinely believe that we are ugly. Which isn't true. It's not true. We're not the critiqued version of ourselves that we're seeing when we're looking back at ourselves. It's just because that's what our inner voice is saying. I decided, when I was healing, I was going to take lots of photos of myself. And not to be vain, but take photos of myself that I didn't necessarily like. And I wasn't going to delete them. I was going to keep them, and I was going to tell myself something I liked about myself in that photo. This is what I was doing. Every time I would take photos, I wouldn't be looking for the flaws or the imperfections or the reasons to retake the photo. I was looking for the things that I loved. And over time, through repetition, I didn't have a problem seeing myself in photos. Sure, it's still not as familiar to me as the reflected version of myself when I look in the mirror. But I'm no longer looking for flaws, I'm no longer looking to critique myself, and I'm no longer speaking negatively about myself. I'm no longer affirming those negative beliefs. I did a video shoot recently for my gym, and I've never been someone, I've said before, to put myself online, to take lots of photos and to video myself. So this was way out my comfort zone. I'm just not natural on camera. And I also feel like most of us, we're all more attractive and our whole aura comes through a lot better in person rather than on a screen. And some of that isn't just visual, it comes with motion, it comes with energy. Anyway, I'm recording this video and I'm so conscious that this camera is here. but I'm trying to stay in the moment and do my workout. I was not as present as I usually would be because I knew I was being monitored. And this is why I feel like this podcasting, even with my voice, I was so conscious I was being monitored, it was hard to record. But now I feel like I've got more used to it because it's more familiar and I'm not critiquing myself as I'm speaking. I knew I was going to get that footage back and that I was be able to check it and see that I'm happy before it got sent off. When I got that footage back, my first initial reaction, even after all this work that I'd done, even after reprogramming my mind, my initial reaction was still, oh, I don't like it. And I could have, in that moment, started picking apart myself going, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, maybe we could change this. But instead, I turned back and I said, it looks great, go for it, post it. We don't see ourselves how other people see us. So other people aren't seeing all of those flaws and imperfections that we're picking apart in ourselves. But I also knew, I made the conscious decision that if I was going to choose that something I didn't like and I was going to affirm that, I was then going to start seeing all these other things I didn't like. And it was never going to be good and never going to be something I liked. So in deciding to say this is good, put it out there, even though my initial reaction was, I really don't like seeing myself in a video, having that out there and then being proud of it, being proud of what is out there, how I'm coming across, I was then repeating to myself that I look great. And the more I actually watched the video, the more I liked it. The more I loved it, actually. And every time I put something out there online that I didn't necessarily initially love, but I was doing it anyway, I was complimenting myself anyway, I was affirming myself anyway. Any new videos I saw, it wasn't a surprise, it didn't give me that initial reaction of cringing. I didn't care. But I actually started seeing them as, I look really good. I saw all the positives. I look really fit. I look really healthy. I look really happy. I'm glowing. I started seeing these things instead of, I don't like how that specific little roll of fat rolls on my back. No one's looking at that. I don't know how many of you know the influencer Sydney. I love her. She's great for positive energy and encouraging women. I absolutely adore her. She made a video where she was showing the widened shot versus the zoomed in shot on the insecurity. And she said, guess how much brainwashing it took to only see this in this video. It's true, we zoom in. In our own heads, we zoom in onto the insecurities, onto the bits we don't like. We hyperfixate when we don't really see the whole picture. When we don't step back and go, actually, this is how everyone's seeing it and I look really great. I am really great. I am really smart. We don't have to be perfect 100% of the time. We can be that, we can be that 90% of the time and still be perceived as being that 100% of the time just because we're not hyperfixating on that 10%, on that small bit. So coming back to how we speak to ourselves, your inner voice isn't neutral. It has an impact. We don't need to silence that voice. That voice is there. Me saying this isn't there to say, don't speak to yourself. But what I am saying is, every time we speak to ourselves, just bring it into your awareness and decide if this is how you want to be speaking to yourself or if this isn't helpful. When we become aware, when we build up that repetition, that familiarity, we can really change our reality, our behaviours, the experiences we're having. Let's talk better to ourselves. Even if it's uncomfortable or unnatural and it's so easy and feels harmless to say something bad about ourselves, let's not do that. This is something I'm still working on. It's something I'll always still be working on. We're always working on this. I would really love to hear what you think. As always, please leave a review, leave a comment, send me a DM at Yalara Collective on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I really love talking to you guys, and every review gets the show to more people that really need to hear it. Let's continue the conversation in the comments. I'm really curious. Listening to this episode, what have you realised about how you're speaking to yourself and what that's been contributing to the experiences you've been having in your life? I want to know. Any additional insight, I really want to hear. If you love this episode and you want to hear more, follow the show on Spotify or whichever podcast provider, and I will speak to you next Tuesday.